Good morning, everyone. Kate Bohr and Fiona Pearman here from Core Confidence. And today we're continuing our conversation around self-belief and specifically receiving feedback. And we know, Fee, this one has the potential to really push people off into a negative downward spiral. We've all been there, myself included, even recently, where perhaps you receive a comment or constructive feedback, even though you may have received some really positive stuff as well, that human nature is to get hooked in to that negative piece or that constructive piece and just debate and analyze and ruminate over it for what can be days.
Yeah, somehow, anything that we could slightly even perceive as negative, we somehow amplify that about 10 times as loud as the really positive things and all the things we've done well. And that sort of out of proportion reaction really has such a, as you said, spiraling or snowball effect. And it may be that the feedback was well intentioned, or someone's really trying to give you some intel that be valuable. But in that moment when we get it, there's for me there's kind of two places I go. One is to sort of want to bury my head and sort of feel ashamed and like, oh God, I've got it all wrong, and they think I'm stupid, and how can I ever have thought that I would be, able to do that? I can certainly remember that in my younger career, not so much maybe today, with the lovely work we've done around confidence over the last sort of 4 or 5 years, but I can really remember those times. And the other one is the kind of escalated into the, really kind of angry, I'm going to prove myself, how dare you, almost like, it's not just an attack on what I've done or said, it's actually an attack on me personally. And that can be an indication that maybe we've just gone a little bit too far.
Yeah, I think no question that, when we're hooked, and, we know we're hooked because we're physically hooked. You can feel it in your body, that defensiveness, you're wrong, I'm right. All of those sorts of stories are almost on high speed in our brain. And I think that is the opportunity to be able to press pause, right? Because if that's the experience you're having, most of the time it's way out of proportion to what has actually gone, to the feedback you've actually received, and to the experience you're actually in. And I think noticing that escalating physiological experience, emotional experience and mental experience, that's the red flag that says, all right, let me stop here and let me calibrate this. Because yes, this is feedback, and it's outside me, it's not sort of inside me, and we need to be able to hold it there. And then what I say is calibrate it against everything else that I've got in my world, against everything I know about myself, against other feedback that I've received, perhaps from trusted advisors. But I think the important piece there is, red flag, notice the reaction, press pause, and then do something with it. I think people tend to stay lost in the cycle. And the problem is when you're lost in it and you give it more energy time, it actually just grows, right? And so it gets even more out of proportion. So I think there's an opportunity to notice it's out of proportion, and then go, all right, let me press pause and let me do something with this. Let me calibrate it and let me look at how I can make this either useful feedback, or potentially maybe decide that it's actually not so useful and then just throw it away.
Yes, I think there's it's such a beautiful thing here to start to get more curious about what's going on, because what we know is once we've attached it to our identity, then that has undermined our self-belief. Like our self-belief is just, crumbling at every second we spend in that rumination, that kind of downward spiral of, how bad I am, or, how unjustified it is. All of that is so unhelpful. So when we can press that pause button, like you said, find out what's useful, what's not, we're really taking a small act of confidence, which is one of the things we find is so powerful for people. When I'm prepared to actually think, oh, okay, well, how true is this? In what context? And how is this relevant to me? I've immediately started to be more focused on where I can go from, rather than staying in the wave of emotion that's over me. And that very small step can be quite powerful in that recalibration process.
Yeah, I think an important piece here is to be able to talk it out with a trusted friend or mentor, to actually get out of your head and start verbalizing it. What we notice is that process, and it's certainly true for me, that process starts to deflate some of the energy that's attached into the stories when they're bouncing around our head. So that's super important. In my experience, that just brings it down a few levels. And of course, often that dialogue, particularly if you're with some really trusted friends or mentors, you get some really good feedback coming back in terms of how you might want to look at that feedback, how you might want to process it. So from some different perspectives that are really valuable. So I think just, what it feels like to me is airing it out a little bit, giving it space to be able to look at it from some different perspectives. And I think one of the best kind of experience is to step into the shoes of that stakeholder, step away from what's right and wrong, and step into the shoes and say, okay, so if I was in their shoes and I was having their experience with everything that they have behind them, all of their beliefs, all of their experiences, all of the information they know or might not know, which is another really important piece, how might they have that experience or that perspective? And then from that point, that's a really beautiful opportunity to go, oh, okay, great. So I understand that perspective. It may not be right or wrong, but I understand it. And that allows me the opportunity, perhaps in the future, to be proactive in influencing some of those factors that have contributed that perspective, or potentially go, and you know what, that's okay. I understand why they might have that perspective, or perhaps not understand. And you know what, actually that's not useful to me. So I think what's most important is we take the feedback, we look at it from the perspective of the person who's provided that, not attached to right or wrong, but just to understand the perspective, and then take what's useful and leave what's not.
Yeah, and the more we can do that, and the more we can step into that actually empowers us. It gives us a point from which we can, we love to say, right size what's going on. It's, if we've blown it out of proportion, it's a really good process to right size it and go, okay, this is how I'm going to deal with this. This is what's useful and valuable to me now. And also I'm going to leave that with them, because I can see that that's actually not helpful at this point. So yes, some great tips, I think, as we move into really getting to the deeper layers of what's going on about the things that do undermine self-belief and make us feel smaller than we are.
Yeah. So if you've enjoyed today's confidence conversation, we'd love for you to post comments below, questions, or reach out to us personally. And of course, if you'd like to go deeper with your relationship with core confidence, please visit our website, coreconfidence.com.au.